Today we're going to talk about insanity under criminal law. First of all, what is insanity? Insanity can be defined as a mental illness of such severe nature that a person cannot distinguish fantasy from reality. He or she cannot conduct their daily day-to-day affairs, and also they can sometimes show quite impulsive behavior. Insanity is stated under Section 84 of the Indian Penal Code 1860. Section 84 is the act of a person of unsound mind. It states that nothing is an offense which is done by a person who, at the time of doing it, by reason of unsoundness of mind, is incapable of knowing the nature of the act, or that he is doing it what is either wrong or contrary to law. Insanity or mental abnormality is one of the general exceptions of criminal liability recognized by IPC. This is based on the principle of mens rea. By the virtue of the maxim actus non facit reum nisi mens sit rea. Okay, I'll repeat. Actis non facit reum nisi mens sit rea. An act forbidden by penal law is not punishable if it is accompanied by a guilty mind. The justification for providing unsoundness of mind as a complete defense is that an insane person is incapable of uh, forming criminal intent. Further, a madman has no will and he is like one who is absent. In fact, a madman is punished by his own madness. The foundation for the law of insanity was laid down by the House of Lords in 1843 in what is popularly known as the M. Nagden case. The accused, by the name of Daniel M. Nagden, suffered from a delusion that Sir Robert Peel, the then Prime Minister of Britain, had injured him. He mistook Edward Dermont, secretary to the Prime Minister of Sir Robert Peel, and then he shot and killed him. The accused took the plea of insanity. The medical evidence showed that M. Nagden was laboring under a morbid delusion which carried him away beyond the power of his own control. He was held to be not guilty by the reason of insanity by the jury. However, his acquittal caused public excitement and considerable furor. In order to seek protection of Section 84 of the IPC, it is necessary for an accused to prove that he, at the time of commission of the act, was of unsound mind, and he, because of the unsoundness of the mind, was incapable of knowing the nature of the act, or that the act was contrary to law. The crucial point of time of such incapability due to unsoundness of mind is the time when he committed the offense. His insanity prior to subsequent to the commission of the offense is not in itself adequate to absolve him from criminal liability. Now, what is actually unsoundness of mind? The term unsoundness of mind has not been defined in the IPC, but we can say that it means a state of mind in which an accused is incapable of knowing the nature of his act, or that he is incapable of knowing that what he is doing is wrong or contrary to law. But it has been equated by the courts to mean insanity. Every person who is suffering from mental disease is not ipso facto exempted from the criminal liability. The insanity for the purpose of Section 84 IPC should be of such a nature that it completely impairs the cognitive faculty of the mind to such an extent that he is incapable of knowing the nature of the act, or what he is doing is wrong or contrary to law. It is only the legal and not the medical insanity that absolves an accused from criminal liability. A good illustration can be found in the case mentioned by Sir James Stephen of the idiot who cut off the head of a man whom he found sleeping because, as he explained, it would be such fun to watch him looking about for his head when he woke up. It is quite certain that he had no idea that his fun would be lost because the man never woke up. If at the time of committing the offense, if the accused knew the nature of the act, he is obviously punishable. The very fact that the authors of the IPC used both the words wrong or contrary to law indicates that the word wrong does not mean contrary to law, for if it is taken as contrary to law, the already existing phrase becomes redundant and the legislature would never use a word which is redundant. Section 84 will apply even in cases of fits of insanity and lucid intervals, but it must be proved in such cases that at the time of commission of the offence, the accused was suffering from a fit of insanity, which rendered him incapable of knowing the nature of his act and was not committed during lucid intervals. If there are any questions, do mention them in the comment box. I'll be happy to answer. Now we'll continue. Now we're going to discuss different kinds of insanity. There is no hard and fast rule what are the kinds of insanity which are recognized by the courts of legal insanity, but we can categorize them into two heads. Dementia naturalis, that is the person was insane from birth. Second is dementia adventia or accidentalist, that is an individual who becomes insane after his birth due to some circumstances. Now, first is hallucination or delusion. Hallucination or delusion is a state of mind where a person may be perfectly sane in respect of everything but may be under a delusion in respect of one particular idea. The Madras and the Bombay High Courts have held that a person who is not insane but is merely suffering from some kind of obsession or hallucination cannot invoke section 84 in his favor. Now second is somnambulism, which means is the unconscious state known as walking in sleep, and if proved it will constitute unsoundness of mind and the accused will get benefit under section 84 of IPC. Now third is irresistible impulse, mental agitation, annoyance or fury. These all merely indicate loss of control and not indicative unsoundness of mind. Every minor mental aberration is not insanity, and the circumstances indicating a mere probability of legal insanity cannot, however, be sufficient to discharge the onus of the accused to establish plea of insanity. Irresistible impulse or impulsive insanity has never been accepted as defense under section 84 and unless it is attributable to unsoundness of mind. However, it is pertinent to note here that the mental abnormality falling short of complete insanity premised on the M. Nagatin rules warrants diminished responsibility under the Homicide Act 1957 of the United Kingdom, the birthplace of the M. Nagatin rules. It obviously covers cases of killings under irresistible impulse. Now, fourth is the insanity resulting from smoking of heavy intoxication. The accused can take shelter under this section if he or she can prove that the insanity existed at the time of commission of the act. However, a mere loss of self-control due to excessive drinking or smoking ganja or abuse cannabis and alcohol does not entitle him the cloak of immunity provided under section 84. Fifth is lack of motive or a trifling matter. The absence of a strong and adequate motive to commit a serious offence like murder is not by itself a proof of insanity. But the absence of motive may be taken into consideration along with other circumstances of the case to determine the question of sanity or otherwise of the accused. Now, sixth is excessive or unusual violence. The brutality and ferociousness of the act by itself cannot lead to the conclusion of insanity. A brutal and callous way of committing a crime cannot by itself be an indicator of unsoundness of mind. Hmm. So, as we have seen, that one of the main points highlighted in this section is that the law is concerned only with the insanity that existed at the time of committing the offense. The existence of unsoundness of mind prior to the commission of offense or after the commission of the offense is neither relevant nor per se sufficient to bring his case within the exceptions provided by section 84. Now we're going to talk about the burden of proof under this. The Supreme Court has outlined the burden of proof in the context of the plea of insanity in the following propositions. The prosecution must prove beyond the reasonable doubt that the accused had committed the offense with the requisite mens rea, and the burden of proving that always rests on the prosecution from beginning to end of the trial. There is a rebuttable presumption that the accused was not insane when he committed the crime, in the sense laid down by section 84 of the Penal Code, that the accused may rebut it by placing before the court all the relevant evidence, oral, documentary or circumstantial, but the burden of proof upon him is no higher than the rest upon a party to civil proceedings. The standard to be applied for ascertaining whether the accused was of unsoundness of mind or not is whether he, according to the ordinary standard adopted by reasonable man, was able to judge whether his act was right or wrong. Now I'm gonna tell a few cases like related to insanity in brief. The first state is Bikhari versus state of Uttar Pradesh. In this case, the accused was working in the field. A few months before the occurrence, he had threatened to kill all the family members of the deceased. Further, on the date of the event, though there were other people around, he carefully chose only the children of the deceased family. All this indicated that his actions were deliberate, premeditated, and not acts of an insane person. Second case is Sherali Wali Mohammed versus state of Maharashtra. In this case, the accused, having killed his wife and daughter with a chopper, locked himself inside the house and shouted, "Save my wife, save my child, call the police." When the door was opened with an axe from outside, he was found standing near the door with a chopper in hand, while his wife and daughter were lying on the ground with bleeding injuries. A plea of insanity was rejected on the ground that neither the absence of motive for killing his wife or children nor attempt on his part to run away when the door was opened indicates that he was either insane or lacked the requisite mens rea. Third case is Ratan Lal versus state of Madhya Pradesh. In this case, the accused was in the habit of setting fire to his own clothes and house. It was held that this could hardly be called rational and was more likely, verging on insanity. The Supreme Court accepted the plea of insanity raised by the accused and absolved him of criminal liability. During the last almost 160 years, the law relating to insanity, as incorporated in Section 84 as an extenuating factor, has remained static. Legislature as well as courts in India, in spite of a number of indicia provided by modern medical science and psychiatry for ascertaining the state of mind of the accused, pleading insanity, and of some progressive statutory and judicial inroads made in the overseas jurisdictions, including in the country of its origin, have not been able to bring any reforms in the law of insanity. As a result, the existence of mental derangements not falling within the ambit of Section 84 has merely been pleaded as an extenuating circumstance. The Law of Commission of India even admitted the fact that the expression unsoundness of mind, uh, compared to the expressions disease of the mind and mental deficiency used in the M. Nagatin rules, is somewhat vague and imprecise. Failed to see any worth in proposing changes in Section 84 of the IPC, apprehending the complicated medico legal issues associated with the defense of diminished responsibility, and recalling the judicial discretion in sentencing under the IPC, allowing courts to take into account any extenuating circumstances, including mental abnormality, is also declined. The idea of incorporating the doctrine of diminished responsibility of the penal code. If there are any questions, any doubts, do mention them. I'll be happy to answer. Thank you for watching.